no door is closed until
Finals draft.
final.
So it's certified.
Until you
until we
certify a
certify it.
document.
So, okay, so just to make clear that any comments where it says, that the door will be closed unless we do these actions, I just, we have the final say, and there'll be plenty of other opportunities, not only for the community, but for our commissions and committees to continue to weigh in. Okay.
The time to do from what I understand, the time to do the questioning of the data and the document is during the draft stage for the public, and that it shouldn't wait. I mean, to get the best document we can, it should come to the Planning Commission, the draft along with the responses and the corrections if needed, should come to the Planning Commission and then on to us as best of document as it can be.
Yes.
With as much information tightened down and correct as it could. I mean, if it comes to the council where we feel it's inadequate and we're asking for revisions, that wouldn't be a good way for it to go down. It should be coming to us for consideration as the best document as it can be. Sure. I would think. And I have one question in the process, is when it goes at the close of comment period, and it goes back to the authors for response, do they have a time period that they need to respond, or is that an open time period for them to make the changes?
There's no statutory requirement under CEQA, and it's going to be a function of how many comments there are and the complexity of the comments, and if the comments trigger new analysis or additional analysis, or whether. So no, there won't be a fixed deadline for them to draft the responses.
So there's really only deadlines for the people reviewing it at this stage, not for corrections triggered by that. Correct?
That's correct.
So, their work or their review or revisions are based on the complexity of the questions in the document, whereas I think that our review of the document should also be based on the complexity.
Yeah, sure. And I agree with you. I mean, I'd like to see the document, the final EIR, come to me as clean as possible. But if I'm reading it and there's something in it that I don't like, I'm not going to trust all the folks that read it before. I'm going to make my comments to it, and I'm going to want it to be reviewed, by the proper agencies or experts, whoever. I think we have our open space and ecology liaisons subcommittee, which is Ray and I. I think there maybe needs to be a meeting to kind of work out perhaps some of the chatter that's coming from some members of the committee and of course the chair, and I think we could come to some kind of mutual understanding that helps, hopefully stays within that 45-day extension that I think all of us agree we are willing to do. So, just throwing that out there.
I'm Anja Miller, Chair of the Citizens Committee. I appreciate being able to add one more thing about the final stage before you certify the final EIR, and that has to do with what's happening around us, specifically in San Francisco, which has certified a huge EIR, project EIR, not a program EIR. It's a final project EIR for the Hunters Point, Candlestick, Viz Valley, Slays Rock, all those projects that are huge. I mean, much, much bigger than ours. And their plans include some things, and they've been adopted, that will affect us and are in conflict with the plans that we are looking at. For instance, the Caltrain station. Already in the map published in 2009, they claim that they put the station up in San Francisco, moving it to San Francisco, our station. I mean, and in the plans we're looking at, the station is where it is, or there has been a bi-county study to maybe move it south. So that, but still in Brisbane, we're talking about the Caltrain station in Brisbane. They have accepted a plan and done an EIR that includes the Caltrain station in San Francisco. So by the time you get to the final certification spot, there may be all kinds of other things too, like with the high-speed rail and all that, all the things that may call for you to take another look. What is the project? What is the final year? What does it have to cover? I'm just seeing the time coming that you have to deal with something else than what's already been presented to you.
Absolutely right.
Thanks.
Jonathan Sharpen with UPC, and just briefly, as most of you know, UPC is a project sponsor for 2 of the EIRs that are certified and were recently mentioned, and neither of those studied the movement of the Caltrain station from Brisbane to San Francisco. That is on the record. But another comment I wanted to make regarding this item is that I believe it is a process question, and I would again like to maybe request that assistance from staff and/or an EIR consultant, professional assistance, will really help with the order and organization of comments for these committees to actually perform the tasks that are before them. I think it would be very helpful to add some discipline to the process to provide some assistance, some facilitated assistance, so that the groups can actually do what it is they believe they are charged to do and can provide the quality of comment that I think everybody's discussing here tonight. So I once again reiterate that option, especially with the time that has been invested thus far and the dollars that have been invested in these documents, that it wouldn't seem unreasonable to have some facilitation so those groups can meet those deadlines that I think are reasonable and already longer than is required by statute. Thank you.
So, Jonathan, with those, if we hire some facilitators to help the groups, would that be a part of the reimbursement process?
My understanding is that that the EIR consultants that you've hired are under our reimbursement agreement. Yes.
Okay.
And we would agree to look at a change of service agreement for facilitation for those groups within the 120-day period.
But just within the 120-day.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not in a position to negotiate at the lectern.
No, I just wanted to reiterate what I thought you said.
But yes.
Okay.
But yes, it's under our reimbursement agreement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Within the 120 days. Okay. Mr. Block.
Brad Block, Brisbane resident. Just wanted to add that a group that I'm affiliated with, we actually met with ESA, which is the consultant that prepared the CIR. In fact, I think immediately after the presentation was made, dealing with the section that we're interested in, we tried to schedule a meeting with this consultant. It took about 6 weeks or so from the time we requested the meeting to take place till we actually were able to meet with the consultant. Following that, it actually raised a lot of very technical questions. It's a very technical document. So we're actually at a position, we're a group of lay people, but now we have to find technical people to actually understand the feedback we got. So, we did meet with the consultant. We got more information. It's now opening up many more questions, and now we need to find, as I say, our own sort of experts to digest what we've been handed. So, I guess what the difference between the 115 and the 45, it's 2 months. I'm just personally wondering what's the hurry? Maybe that's a loaded question, but that's my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, perhaps we need to have our council liaison, staff, meet with OSEC and kind of take a look at that request. I don't know, maybe even have the consultant there and see what kind of assistance they can provide for that. Like I said, I am good with 45 days, 115 out of the gate. I don't know, because I think we got to kind of look at that. I'm not comfortable with that. Right at this point. It's not like a hurry up thing or anything like that. It's just we have commitments that we do want to make and move process along.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and I know it's not an easy issue, and we've got a lot of volunteers. Everybody volunteers for that. And so I'd really like to take a look and have that batted around and see if there's another way we can come up with it to see if we can meet the timeline or extend it within the 45-day period. And it may end up that we can't. We may have to go further, but I'd really like to have some dialogue between OSEC, the subcommittee, staff, and maybe the consultant. Because there might be interpretational issues on what we're looking at, too, so.
How much of the draft EIR have each of you actually read? Have you read Chapter 3, the site description? Have you read anything in Chapter 4 yet? I think it would, if you haven't, I think it would really help you a lot to understand the magnitude of the challenges that we're facing and some of the areas that we find it to be, that I personally find it to be inadequate. So have you actually read even the site description in the draft EIR?
I haven't read any of it, Michelle.
Okay, so before you
and
meet
I don't
with us,
plan on reading any of it until next year, to be honest with you.
then how can you understand what we're up against with reviewing it if you
That's why
haven't?
I want to have our subcommittee have the dialogue, because I do trust you guys, to do something, but to ask something 115 days out of the gate when we're not even 60 days into it, I got an issue.
Oh, I'm 60 days into it. I've been reading it and studying it, and that you haven't even cracked the book. And I find that in order for you to understand what we're up against, you should at least read the site description, Chapter 3. I really do. And just one of sections 4A through O or P or whatever it goes to, so that you have some hands-on understanding of what your citizens are doing. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm really comfortable with the liaison committee meeting. I would, without voting on this tonight, I think it would be nice for our committees have a reasonable assurance that they would have at least the 45 days, and that the liaison can meet with the committees and the citizen committee and see if the need is greater than the 45 days and make a decision when we come back at our next meeting? Would that be a compromise that we
Okay.
could deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
I'm comfortable with that.
yeah, I mean, I think the citizen committee is fine with the 45 days because that's what they've requested, so I think we're covered there. You know, what Michelle brings up, you know, is the magnitude,
Right.
of the document, and that's the concern that I have for the OSEC members, and that's why I'd like to have that meeting to see if there's a way that we can not put so much of a burden on all those volunteers, you know, and so I know this letter is coming from the Open Space and Ecology Committee, but I'm hearing, you know, word from other members that it's very labor intensive and it's difficult for them to handle all of it, and so we got to find some kind of a balance.
Okay.
So.
Well, I would like to make one other comment, and, you know, I've sat in on some of the meetings so that I knew what was going on in different meetings. And to have the current people who wrote the EIR, the consultants, being the person who reviews or summarizes it, I think defeats part of the purpose. Although they do know the information, it's hard to be self-critical. And so I think that to get your best bang from a person who's going to come in and help people understand flaws or peculiarities or different complex issues, it almost needs to be someone who is somewhat removed from the integrity of the document.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you know, we may have to end up extending it further, but, you know, I think that conversation does need to take place and, you know, have some dialogue on, you know, what the expectations are, what we, you know, what we really do want, you know, feedback from the committee, you know,
Right.
I mean, in whole.
Ultimately, it's up to us to provide the
Right.
direction for the committee. You're correct.
So Terry, you want to make a motion?
I thought we weren't going to make a motion. I mean, I would
It
just
would,
like an assurance that I mean, I think that the committees would need the assurance that we would have at least 45 days, but I thought, well, you wanted
That's why I
more.
think it ought to be a motion. Because then you got something on that. Well, always ask the attorney question like that, but I think it would be better to have a motion.
Well, I think if the intent is to provide a 45-day extension, then it is necessary to make a formal motion and vote on that to extend it by 45 days. Otherwise, there is nothing binding in terms of any extension.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
I was giving Terry a chance because she proposed it.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted our committee not to think that they didn't have those 45 days.
Right.
I would really be more comfortable with the longer time period. And I hate for it to make it sound that, oh yeah, I'm fine with the 45 days when I'm not sure I am.
Okay.
So,
But the caveat was that there would be this further conversation and
well, that's the
between the liaison committee.
liaison committee, so that they can find out if there's something else they can do to help.
Or, as Clark says, you know, maybe longer if that
May
turns to be
ultimately
the
end up
outcome.
being that, you know, so.
Is there, again to city attorney, is there an issue if we make the 45 days and then come back in 2 weeks or a month and request the additional days?
Councilmember O'Connell, you would have the option prior to the expiration of whatever the final date is for review of the EIR to reconsider, and again, if there was a finding of unusual circumstances, to extend it if the council in its discretion felt that was appropriate.
Okay. Okay, with that, I guess I will make the motion to extend the 45 days.
Second.
And with the understanding that there will be a meeting between the liaison committee and OSPEC to see how they're doing and see what further developments would be appropriate.
And that needs to happen soon.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes. Understanding, part of the motion, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may we take a short break?
I figured you could have mentioned that, and it seems like it's time.
Yeah.
It does.
We will take a short break. So let me know when you're ready, Sherry. Are we on? Okay. May we resume the meeting, please? And the next item on the agenda is no less complex, and that is the latest report on the soil processing recycling permit, and particularly the history thereof. And Planning Director has prepared that, so I assume he's going to take the ball.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. This matter regarding the dirt stockpiling and soil recycling on the Baylands site has been an ongoing issue of concern over the past few months at council, and staff was directed to do some research, clarify some issues related to the regulatory status of the permits and the controls over the site. And so we put together for you is a fairly brief history, and I'll just kind of go through it as quickly as I can. The site was first authorized in 1977 to allow for reclamation and surcharge of the closed landfill. Conditions of approval at that time related to adequate dust control measures as requested by the city engineer. There were no conditions related to either the amount or height of material being moved on site, nor was there any reference to stockpiles in any shape or form. The next iteration of the permit authorization was in 1983. And it was again characterized as continued reclamation of landfill property, and clearly specified that stockpiling incidental to reclamation was a permitted activity. At first, this permit first introduced site earthwork specifications, which were prepared by the applicant at the time to serve as kind of the engineering control over the site, and those included a 25-foot stockpile height, a 25-foot high stockpile limit for loose material cleared from the site. Did not include a stockpile height limit for imported fill. There are a number of proceedings to revoke that use permit over time. It was initiated by the city. Their grounds for revocation were identified as dust generation, lack of compliance with operational conditions, and visual concerns, among other. At that point in time, a 25-foot height limit was imposed as a dust control mitigation measure. So that was the first time that the 25-foot high stockpile limit was identified as a requirement of the city, and it was imposed for dust control. Specifically, the record reflected there were concerns that if the piles exceeded 25 feet, the operators were not able to provide get water onto the dust pile or the pile, so it was generating more dust. So the 25-foot height limit was seen as adequate for allowing for dust control of the site. Then the permit was extended into 1997, and this was the first permit that recognized stockpiling of soil and sand for resale as a permitted use, while still recognizing the function of preparing the site for long-range development. The stockpile limit condition carried forward to the wording of the materials may be stockpiled no higher than 25 feet above ground level. And there was really not a lot of discussion in that particular permit iteration regarding the stockpile heights. That was not an issue of concern at the time. Then the current permit, UP 803, was approved in 2004, and it retained the same stockpile height language with a slight modification. It referenced 25 feet above surrounding grade. So the word surrounding grade was added in the condition of approval at that particular point in time. Since that time, the use permit and extension request was made in a timely manner in 2007. In recognition of a number of the site management issues that have occurred over time, that permit has been put on hold to allow for a much more robust operational plan to be developed. There was certain informational requests that the previous operator was not able to provide to the city to our satisfaction. The property owner ultimately found a different operator, a new operator, who went through the process of developing an operations plan. The plan has been subject to a couple rounds of regulatory review by both County Environmental Health and Regional Board, and it's still going through some final reviews. We're expecting to have that finalized and scheduled for Planning Commission review later this year, and that's the schedule today. In the interim, operating under the previous use permit, the applicant has agreed to a number of other operational measures that weren't called out in the previous use permit. These included having the city have a compliance audit performed by an independent consultant to evaluate this facility's soil testing procedures and intake procedures, to ensure that fundamentally the material being brought into that site qualified and constituted clean fill at the time. And again, there's been a number of modifications recommended to the operations plan that will be embedded into the permit that the Planning Commission reviews in the upcoming year, to ensure that those conditions are carried forward in a formal way. Right now, they're not formally part of the conditions of approval to require this kind of testing and certification. They've also been working with the Public Works Department on dust management issues, having an extra water truck available on site as needed to deal with dust generation. And they've also been working with the Regional Board with implementing a series of best management practices for stormwater, and that's an ongoing work in progress with the Regional Board. So that's kind of the regulatory environment. The other issue relates to the physical site changes over time, and again, it's clear that the elevations of the site have gone up substantially over time. You know, the first topographic data we had, which was pretty rough spot elevations associated with that 1977 permit, generally showed elevations in the 14 to 18 foot range south of the channel and 20 to 29 feet north of the channel, so being the kind of the divider. And you know, over time, the site elevations have increased on the order of 30 to 50 feet. You'll find elevations out there now, you know, exceeding 60 feet in areas, in some spots exceeding 70 feet nowadays. So there's been a substantial increase in the height of the site, the site elevations over time. Definitely is the case. And you know, again, I'm trying to provide more context here in terms of not really getting into what the past management practices or regulatory management decisions were that were made in the city over the last 40 years of that site. They're really kind of looking forward to how the city might want to regulate this use as it continues over time, if it continues over time, and you know, to try to deal with some of these problems that have been occurring on an ongoing basis. And the first, you know, the question that has come up most directly to the council here is whether or not the 25-foot high stockpile limit has been exceeded. And I think we all recognize the site has gone up in elevation by well over 25 feet in the last 40 years. But given the basis for the stockpile limit that was established under the permit, it was a dust control measure. It was not an aesthetic measure. It was not tied to any sort of benchmark of a physical elevation or a fixed elevation. It's made it very clear that it was limited, the stockpile height was limited to 25 feet from surrounding grade, not existing grade, not from a fixed benchmark elevation. And in fact, the basis that a stockpile needed to be accessible by a watering truck, and it had to be less than 25 feet or 25 feet or less to be accessible from a watering truck, would further go against the argument that this was tied to some abstract benchmark. Because again, if it was tied to an abstract benchmark, the intent of the condition to allow for adequate water on a pile would not really, there'd be no relationship between an abstract benchmark and tying height to that versus the idea of a pile where someone could literally drive next to with a watering truck and get water to the height of a 25-foot pile. So believe that the record is very clear that the 25-foot high stockpile limit relates to loose dirt material above a fixed level elevation. Begs the question whether or not, you know, again, was the intent that the site be allowed to be elevated over time? What the intent was, I wasn't here for those 40 years of permitting. All I can tell you is by looking at the record, there was no demonstration in the record of those 40 years of permit that that was a regulatory requirement or a condition to tie the increase in elevation over time to that site. Again, through any of the renewals, there was never a mention made of trying to fix it to a fixed point in elevation. Since this height elevation, the 25-foot stockpile limit, isn't a valid tool for measuring or trying to regulate the aesthetic impacts of this facility, I think staff recognizes, the community recognizes this facility does have aesthetic impacts and its operations continue to have aesthetic impacts. So I think the real question is how, in a permit moving forward, are we able to regulate the aesthetic impacts of this facility in a much more transparent and enforceable manner? I think that raises some questions as to what are the aesthetic impacts. Does it relate to the overall scope of the operation, the number of acres that are disturbed? Is it the stockpile height of loose material that are visible? Is it the increasing grading that's occurred over time to raise the elevation of the site? Those are all kind of different aesthetic issues that are going to require different conditions of approval or management tools to address in a future condition of approval. to say, well, we're going to limit the aesthetic impacts of this operation, it has to take that next step of really trying to determine what aspect of this operation we're trying to physically, from an aesthetic standpoint, control and regulate. And I think that's really a challenge, and to the extent we can get some valuable input and the Planning Commission can get that kind of input when they consider this permit update, that would be a very valuable input for them and for staff. The other sort of ongoing issue has been dust control over time. And again, you see back even in the early 80s when the permit was threatened for revocation, one of the issues was dust generation on site. Clearly, we need to look at what are our best regulatory tools and operational tools that we can apply to this project to try to minimize that. There are certain challenges given the inherent physical nature of the operation. You're constantly moving material. The environmental conditions of wind conditions out there make it problematic as well. But this next permit, we'll be looking at whatever kind of strategies, whether it's operational, management, or regulatory, that we can impose on this operation to have a more responsive and responsible approach toward dust control on that site. And the third, I think, major focus is to ensure that the material that enters that site constitutes clean fill as defined, and that the city makes sure that the operator has an ongoing record of documenting that material, the source of that material, its testing, and that we maintain and continue an ongoing auditing procedure over time. The life of this permit, however many years it is that the city should have the full ability to be able to audit their records at any time and ensure that we can track the safety of the material that's entering that site. The last concern has been raised several times that somehow raising the elevations, as has occurred historically over the site, is somehow creating a new benchmark for future development, from which future development can be extended or applied. And that's not really the case. The city will control, like every other aspect of the development for the Baylands that gets approved, the city will control the ultimate pad elevations, the building elevations for that site. So if there's material that's stockpiled at elevation 60 and the city's decision is to, that elevation should be 20 or 25, the developer will have to revise the plan to meet what the city approves. And whatever material's been put out there temporarily over the years has no limitation on the city's ability to regulate that. And you'll see that even the draft grading plan prepared by the applicant in conjunction with the specific plan that's reviewed in the environmental impact report substantially reduces proposes pad elevations on this portion of the site, which is the landfill only, substantially below what they are today currently in the field. So that's not really the activity that's occurred out there on a temporary basis does not lock the city in any sort of final land use decisions or elevation decisions for that site in the future. With that, I just want to close and clarify that there are two operations that occur on the landfill portion of the Baylands. This report and all the information and the research we did related to the soil stockpiling and recycling facility called Bayland Soil Processing, or BSP. There's another operation called Brisbane Recycling, which is located at the north end of the site. That business operation primarily relates to recycling of construction materials such as concrete, asphalt, crushing, grinding, recycling of those kind of materials. The permit record here is not related to Brisbane Recycling. They have their own use permit process, and whatever happens with this particular operating permit for Brisbane Soil Processing, we will anticipate imposing the same kind of regulatory regimen to make sure that that facility operates, I think, at a higher degree of compliance and control for the city than currently happens. So I do want to make sure we're all clear there are two different operations that occur on the landfill portion of the site. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions the council might have.
I think I had a couple of questions that were directed to the city attorney. I wonder if he would please respond to them.
Be happy to. Just give me one moment to bring those up on my screen here.
Okay.
What were the questions?
He'll tell us.
Okay.
Mayor Miller, your first question was, under what city authority are the various operations conducting their businesses? And again, the hearing tonight, or the discussion tonight, is focused on the Brisbane soil processing operation rather than the other recycling operation. With respect to the Brisbane soil processing operation, the authority is under the use permit that was issued in 2004, and prior to its expiration, there was the timely application for the extension for the multiple reasons explained by John. There's been an ongoing dialogue and discussion, actually a removal of the former operator that submitted the request for the extension, and the substitution of a new operator. But at this time, the authority would be under that prior permit, based on the city's extending it, based on the timely application and the continued review of the renewal permit application. At some point in the near future, that permit will go to the Planning Commission for either approval, denial, or approval with new conditions on it. Your second question...
So, they're operating under what? Is there a formal extension that's been issued at some... I mean, is there something in writing that says they can continue indefinitely? I mean, what's the written legal authority that they have there? Because the original permit wasn't it for 5 years? If so, if that's the case, then they're beyond that. So there must be some basis of legal extension of that time. That's what I'm trying to get a handle on.
The extension, again, there was a written application for the extension prior to the expiration of the 2004 permit. That application for extension has not been denied at this point, so it's still pending. So it would be that written application for the extension that would be the legal basis for the continuing operation at this point.
So if somebody just applies, it can go on indefinitely? If the city doesn't do anything?
Well, clearly, at some point, there needs to be a decision. It needs to go to the Planning Commission for approval. There were a number of reasons that were the basis for the lengthy extension. I believe that the city required a number of studies, of reviews that were actually not required by the original permit. I wouldn't disagree that the extension is lengthy, and it needs to be brought to a conclusion very, very quickly. I think, again, looking forward, if there is an extension request, then action should be taken fairly expeditiously rather than allowing it to continue. But in this particular case, the city has not taken action to deny the permit and would need to do so to terminate the use.
Okay. So these processes don't have any sunset? I mean, it's up to the city to decide when they want to get around dealing with a new permit? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, effectively that's correct. I mean, the city in this particular instance, through the ongoing dialogue and process, has not terminated the permit, and it does continue. The city, in its discretion, has continued the ability to operate under the existing permit, pending, again, either the ultimate denial, approval, or modification of the use permit.
Okay, got it.
Second question was, what are the legal restrictions on the height of the height of the fill? And again, as John referenced, going back over the original permits, it appears that the concern for the 25-foot height was based on the ability to provide watering and dust control for those dirt pockets. I looked carefully to see if there was any reference to a set elevation that could be used as a set point, and that the 25 feet could not exceed that from the set elevation. That is not currently existing in the permit history. Of course, going forward, if the aesthetics are a concern, that is an appropriate consideration for the council in any approval of or the planning commission in any approval of a future use permit. And if the intent is to set an absolute height above which the fill cannot go further, then what should be done in any future permit is setting a base elevation and then setting exactly what the height would be from that base elevation so that it can be actually measured and determined.
So essentially, under the current permit, they could put fill of 1,000 feet and it still wouldn't be illegal.
If the fill reached a point where it was becoming a problem, then the Planning Commission, as the issuing authority, does have the right to immediately impose additional conditions on that permit.
But that would have to be done.
That would have to be done.
Okay. No, the reason I asked the question is people are saying, the height is illegal. And from what I hear you saying that, there is no such thing as an illegal height at this point. There is an illegal stockpile maybe, but there isn't an illegal height per se.
Based on the existing permit, that's correct. So in theory, it could continue to rise as long as it was never 25 feet above what the surrounding grade was. However, as I mentioned, at the point where, whether it's now or at some point in the future, if there were aesthetic considerations or an intent by the Planning Commission to stop the height immediately, it could do that, and it would have to impose that additional condition.
Okay.
And your final question was, what are the respective responsibilities of the Bay Area Air Quality Control Board and the city? The city has the right under the use permit to enforce the conditions. Those would include dust control, health and safety issues. And so in the provisions of the use permit, it states that if there are complaints or concerns, then the city does have the authority to either require that the operation cease operating until the dust control has been taken care of, or that they immediately need to implement appropriate dust control measures to stop whatever dust intrusions there are. That is a separate authority and somewhat overlapping with the authority of the Bay Area Air Quality Control District, which is involved with health and safety issues, and independently, based on its regulations, if there's a complaint, it can come out and cite the operator for violation of the air quality standards, and that would be pursued through the BOCMED process separately from the city. There's nothing that would prevent both the city and BOCMED from taking the appropriate action if there was dust that was becoming a problem on the site.
So the Air Quality District doesn't have a preemptive authority?
No, I don't believe it does. I think that under the terms of the use permit, the city has the authority to enforce the conditions in the use permit independently from the Bay Area Air Quality District.
The only thing I would add to that is that the Bay Area Air Quality District has the ability to implement fines, and I don't believe under our permit we currently have that. So that's something we may want to think about going.
Okay, the Air Quality District has a fining system, but our current use permit that's sort of continuing indefinitely does not have a fining process.
Correct.
We have been shut down.
You could shut them down, but
right.
You could do that, right?
And I want to put in the context that the shutting them down has been in has been event-driven. So in other words, it's been to shut them down for a couple hours at a period of time when the wind is up or something of that nature. I do want to indicate that, and it'd be helpful, I think, to the council in your conversation tonight. Both myself and the Public Works Director did have an opportunity to talk to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District today. They kind of walked me through, I guess, a couple different processes they have in terms of dust mitigation, dust abatement. Basically, their process is through the California Health and Safety Code, and that they can apply fines to businesses who are operating and causing public nuisances, which basically this would be. The inspector who actually has all of San Francisco and right now is also dealing with San Mateo County because the San Mateo County person's out on leave, was out to the businesses today, both businesses, and contacted them, had an on-site visit with them. And I know that, and Randy may want to speak to this, that Randy and his inspector and the inspector from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District want to get together and actually do an on-site visit with the businesses, and so that we get a higher level of coordination between the city and the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. One of the things that I think on a staff level that we want to consider when we go forward with a permit renewal is this whole issue of the ability to levy fines if we have activity that goes on and it's unabated or not handled appropriately, because I think that's probably the best way to get people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Randy, did you want to add anything?
No, sir, nothing to add.
Okay, questions?
Can I make a couple comments?
Yeah, what?
Yeah, I have some questions now.
Yeah, usually questions first and then comments. So.
I'm sure your comments will be questions.
But there, you could phrase them as kind of questions, right?
I'll let somebody else go first, because, it sort of will let me calm down a bit.
Oh, okay.
So, someone else can go first that wants to ask questions.
I can, and then,
Okay.
I'd have to, on that 25-foot level, I mean, I understand it, the way it's written and everything, the way you explained it and everything, but I gotta say that I just don't think at some point that's really what was envisioned, is this thing go up high and stuff like that, and as high as it is. But it is what it is right now. I mean, that's certainly something to deal with in the next round of this. But I just, think that the intent and then what was written are two different things. But I understand that, the legal part of it is the legal part of it, and that's the way it's written. So somewhat disappointed in that, but that's just, my opinion. Randy, just on, I think about it, and I know I hear comments from citizens like, man, we're going to let them build on that? And just from an engineering perspective, knowing that there's, vertical loads and stuff and compaction and stuff like that, could you just kind of comment on soils and stuff like that and how
Sure.
actually...
Sure, sir. To my knowledge, there's no documentation of the placement of that fill according to engineering standards, so it would be classified as unengineered backfill, which means it would have to be removed and replaced according to engineering standards before we'd allow it to be built on. And of course, there's the challenge they also have with that, with it being a former municipal solid waste landfill, is that they're also going to have to establish a cap pursuant to Title 27 standards that would meet Cal Recycle's approval. And so how they are going to place the cap of the appropriate permeability and have the correct vertical separation between the underlying waste matrix and the proposed development above it is going to require a significant movement and replacement of what's out there now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, it was very interesting reading the staff report, and then and touching base with Clay over the weekend just to to get that clarification and about the height of the the stockpiles, and the stockpiles are different than elevations. And so, I think you did a great job of kind of walking us through it, John, and not only just explaining it, but just also kind of kind of like sharing your kind of your feelings about, like, well, hey, this is something that happened in the past, and yeah, we definitely don't want to make those, to continue that kind of mistake or just misunderstanding of what we would allow out there. But of course, then people are also concerned about what the future will have out in the Baylands, and I'm glad you brought up that question, Clark, because the site has not been capped properly, and that the soil that's out there is just soil on top of the garbage, and it will need to be properly mitigated. But it hasn't been done yet. John talked about the elevations, and the elevations that to build that are coming from UPC's plan. Those elevations are based on sea level, right, John? I mean, so you can't really look at the stockpiles out there, and use that as a reference. You have to look at sea level, and then we're looking at 20 to 25 feet in the north and 30 to 40 in the south. For me, this whole issue really centers around dust. Though the heights of the soil is alarming, I have to be honest, this wasn't a top priority for me on my radar screen. But when I saw video footage of the dust that was coming off of the mountain, then that really concerned me. And it's like, okay, we need more appropriate measures in place to make sure that it's safe for everyone. And so, you talked about some alternative dust control measures. Can you put tarps over some of these mounds that, to control dust, or what are some other measures that we might be able to entertain?
Well, I think that there's probably a variety of different strategies that we can try to implement. I mean, I think the most important one is getting the attention of the operators, and I do believe they're certainly aware of the issue, and I think they do try, but they often the situation gets away from them for whatever reason. So I think that what we really have to have is a dialogue with the property owner, with the operators, with the city, and with Bay Area Air Quality Management District to come up with the best practices and the best strategies we can to try to mitigate this. It's a windy site, and that's unfortunately the reality that they've got to deal with. And, that's not an excuse for having dust fly off of it. So, I think our thought was that maybe that this would get referred back to a council subcommittee to work with staff, and then we'll, like I said, we had a good conversation with Bay Area Air Quality today, and I think that's a good first step or next step in this process. And I do want to say that our inspector has been out there on multiple occasions, and Randy's been out there on multiple occasions, and our police department responds when there's calls come in at odd hours or something. So I mean, it's definitely not new news to them, nor is it something that we take lightly. And it's a challenge to get our arms around. But I think that the issue has been exacerbated in the last 6 months because the amount of dirt that's come out there. And of course that's a whole different issue that we got to talk about. But in the meantime, the dust management is something that's inexcusable for it not to be dealt with appropriately on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, and this operation has been, or particular use, I should say, has been going on, for quite some time, 40 years almost. And, of course, now we're at the process of the draft EIR and looking at changing the uses at the site in the future. But, of course, we don't know how long that process is going to be. And, we could be moving dirt around for quite a few years. What triggers some kind of environmental study in regards to a use like that? Okay, I mean, and I don't, okay.
Again, historically, that use has operated on the basis of a categorical exemption from CEQA.
Okay.
In the previous permits that were issued. The anticipation was with this renewal that there would be an environmental document prepared, whether it's a mitigated negative deck or what have you. That would be something the Planning Commission would have to decide when they actually consider the approval action, but we were not anticipating moving forward as past practice with the categorical exemption.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Those are all the questions I have.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Terry?
I'm not sure I've got questions, but I feel that for the 2 years I've been sitting up here, I've been getting untruths about this piece of property. We have kept being told we had a 25-foot limit or height, but we just didn't know where the base was from. And before I was sitting up here, we've asked about it, and we always got that answer. So I'm glad we're getting a little bit better answer now, and that basically they just keep building the base, and then they can go up another 25, and then they build the base and they can go up another 25, and then they build the base, and we're building a second San Bruno Mountain with dirt that we're going to have to move again. And I feel violated by this finding this out now, because we should have known about this and shouldn't have gotten those kind of answers to our questions about how big can the pile be until tonight. And it brings up that if they're bringing it up to grade and then can go up higher again for their pile, it goes to show that we should have a grading ordinance out on the flat areas. I talked with staff on why we wouldn't need grading permits and hearings on grading in our flat areas like the Baylands, and because who would want to build a pile? Well, we've got a pile going there, and we haven't issued a permit to change the grade. They get to do it because they keep getting go up. And I think that shows why we do need, even for a flat piece of dirt or parcel, why we need regulations for those things, so this doesn't happen again. And I hope it doesn't happen again, that we don't know where we can go with things and what height. And I've seen some of the dust mitigation and things that they do on other huge long-term storage of sawdust or dirt and rocks and things, and they sprinkler it, they cover it with chain link fencing, they put sprinklers up there, and they run them 24 hours a day. And that's what you see up on those piles that I've seen in other states and in other areas. And it's big and ugly, and you're stuck with that pile for a long time. So I'm really appalled that we have this and that we didn't know what we really had. And I certainly hope, I know tonight's not the night, but we've got 70 feet of dirt places there. And I'm just appalled appalled that we let this happen. Every day, driving down the highway, you could call BAAQMD and have a complaint for what you see blowing off that site. And I just don't understand how we have let it get this far with this little oversight and with this just coming to light now. It's sad. And I'm glad to know that those aren't the heights that the plan for the Baylands is going to be, and that they're going to have to move it all. But it also bothers me that they're going to have to move it all. And that we've had people come and complain about their views that, they can't see out to the bay anymore. And at least it gives you an idea of what the 40 feet, the 30 and 40 feet that they're planning on for the base level eventually on the site, on what kind of height and where it's going to be. But this pile is growing every day. Amazing. And it has gotten probably, it seems like about 30% broader in the last month. They're going clear out to the edges as far as they can and going up and up and up. So we have to do something. I would be happy to be on the soil processing subcommittee, because we need to try to, certainly if we have a permit that's ongoing that we have no control over other than to have them control the dust, we need to get a better permit or stop them. That's my little tirade.
It was a good one.
Yeah. We'll take it. And we have some requests from the audience, public testimony. And both Brad and Michelle, you can sort of take your decision as to, if you come first, Brad, or then you won't have to get, you like to get up.
Why would it
Yeah,
count?
right, all right, polite.
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident, and Terry's tirade was really pretty calm compared to how I feel, because I have been complaining about this for quite a while, like years. And I'd just like to say, earlier in the evening, we had a discussion about what it says versus what the intent is, all right? And I went back and read the actual permit that from 2004 that was asked to be extended in 2007. And it says, under conditions of approval, item C, materials shall be stockpiled no higher than 25 feet above the surrounding grade. And the surrounding grade is defined in the title as being Tunnel Road and Lagoon Way. And that is what it says, and I don't give a damn about what the intention was. That is what it says. It doesn't say anything about the 25 feet being related to dust control. This is what the permit says.
Do you have a date on that?
Yeah, 2004. And that should have been supplied in your packet along with this memorandum, because there are other things in that permit.
Is that to the Planning Commission?
That was the Planning Commission.
This one here is the document that you're looking at is from the...
It's on my phone. I have a copy of it that I requested a couple of weeks ago, and I believe John's gone to go get a copy of it. And I have serious questions, because the other thing it says in there is, and it says the definition of surrounding grade is in the title of the permit. And also, in this document you got tonight on page 2, paragraph 3, before UP 803 expired in 2007, the applicant made a timely application to extend for another 5 years. And it goes on with the story, But that was 6 years ago. 6 years ago, and we have not written a new permit. And John didn't say, when a new operator was put in place, or when the site draft was done, or when the submitted shortly will be. Is it going to be another 6 years of negligence on our part as a city? Also, in the document, it says that all stockpiles are to be removed in 60 days of the cessation of use. It also has documents stating about you can only import 120,000 cubic yards per month. Okay, there's a lot of restrictions in the original permit, exactly as it has written, no matter what the intent was, the way it is written. And if that's the permit that they are quote-unquote still operating on 6 years after it has expired, regardless of whether they put in an application or to extend it, they're in clear violation of their permit on several counts. So although this historical little, document kind of characterizes what the history has been, is not accurate about what the actual permit says. And I think you need to go back to the source document that was in effect in 2007 and read what it says, and now let's either enforce it or stop it. Because I have called BAAMQD, I have complained. I show you a photograph that I took on August 3rd, Saturday, after complaining on Thursday and Friday and Saturday. The representative who was substituting for the person that was on vacation called me back on Monday morning, clear, foggy, calm Monday morning, and said, I'm at the soils processing plant and they seem to have everything under control. And yet you look at Brad's pictures that were taken on the 14th, does that look like it's under control to you? No, it has not ever been under control. On a windy day, it blows dust all over the place. Big surprise. I have stood up here and said this several times over the last several years. So now you believe somebody else who brings a picture and my own pictures? But I told you the dust was blowing so thick over the highway, I could taste it. So, and John even said, temporarily over the years. Temporarily over the years. We're going to be living with temporarily for a really long time. And what if there are no buildings? What if, God forbid, you guys don't approve any buildings being built there once you've reviewed the EIR? Then what happens to all the dirt? It just sits there at 70, 80, 90, 100, 1,000 feet, when it really is only supposed to be 25 feet above the surrounding grade, defined as Lagoon Way and Tunnel Road in the document itself, in the title of the document itself. So the city has the authority to enforce dust control, even if it overlaps over the Bay Area Air Quality Control Management. I suggest you do that. And I suggest that you also enforce everything else of the permit that they are currently operating under that expired 6 years ago. I'm just disgusted at the negligence, and I'm also disgusted that this document doesn't clearly characterize what the permit actually says, regardless of the intent. And that's a lesson for us all to learn about what it actually says, as opposed to a summary or the intent. You'd think we'd learn this lesson by now, after all the times the intent was not what actually happened.
Once again, Brad Block, Brisbane resident. So, first of all, thank you, everyone, for the questions that you've asked already of your staff and your attorney. It shows that you have taken this under consideration and taken steps to figure out what's really happening here. I guess wanted to maybe at this point reiterate now what Michelle said, but this was clearly not a permit to create a mountain. At no point was the intent to create a mountain, and in fact, I believe the permit, as it was originally written, qualified for a CEQA exemption on the basis of this 25-foot height limit from surrounding grade. And as any landscape architect or any planner will tell you, when you have a permit for a site, the surrounding grade does not include the site itself. It includes the surrounding area. Okay? That's what it means. So the continued CEQA exemption, again, this is predicated on this 25-foot height limit. If the applicant were to go and now apply for something higher than that, presumably that would have to be revisited. It's my opinion, if you want to create a mountain, you probably do need to have an environmental impact report prepared. So, you know, I guess I would just close, again, thank you for your work here. Wondering when we will expect the site to be brought back into compliance, if there's any idea on schedule or time frame. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie Dunn, Brisbane resident. You know what I've been doing tonight. I haven't been here, but I've been here. When George Moscone and Harvey Milk were murdered, and we marched down Market Street, there were people along the way who spoke to us, who cried to us, who hollered to us, but one man stuck out, and he said, "Where is your anger? Where is your anger?" That we have a council person that has to say, my little tirade, oh no, that's not a tirade. We can show you a tirade. We can recall the whole council if the council doesn't do what this city wants. That's a tirade. What else we can do? We can get everybody fired if that's what the city wants. That's a tirade. But we've got people that are going against the law. We've got people that have covered up shit with more shit, with more shit, with more shit. And I'm tired of it. I don't want to see anybody apologizing from the council for anything. You're here to do the work of the people. We expect it. The staff is here to do the work of the people. We expect it. And you should be angry. You should be angry that this is happening. You should be angry that there are people from the community who have to come and do this damn job because it's not being done. It's not being done by you or by the staff. Who is not doing this job and why is it not being done? And why are they getting away with this? And we all know what a bunch of baloney this is. We're all very aware of this baloney. We see it, we hate it, but we look to you to stand up and do something about it. Years ago, Mr. Lentz, I said, who will speak for the people? I asked every council person, and you said, I will. Well, where are you? Let's find out now. I am angry. If you're not angry, I am angry. And you know what? There are a lot of people out there that are as angry as I am. And something's going to happen. That anger's going to boil up. We don't expect council people to have to do the very nice talking, trying to appease people, trying not to offend. Forget it. They've screwed us royally. We're not taking it anymore. It's about time we had some real strength. I'm only 72 years old. I look up to Ray. He's got me beat, big time. But I know what anger's about, and I feel it. And I've been watching this for 25 years, and I can't believe how people can pile shit upon shit upon shit upon shit, and we still look at it and say, well, we don't have the permits, and the permit says this, and then we look back at 1994 plan, it says this, and then there was this permit. Oh, come on. Come on. Come on, guys. Let's put it together. Don't have people sitting out there like I was at home watching this and saying, Where is your anger? You should have anger. We're being screwed as a city. We can't take it anymore. And I will say this, if it's one of the last things I do in my life in this city, if it has to be done, I'll march on the streets and I'll ask that question, where is your anger? And believe me, I did it in another place I lived, and I went to every single home. And it took me 6 weeks, but I went to every single home. And I spoke to every single resident about an issue that had to be changed, and it got changed. And I may be older, I'm a lot wiser, and I can still do it, and I will have people with me. So somebody, hike up your boots, and let's get going. Let's not have these people show up, give us this baloney again. We put up with it again. We all try to be nice. We're not Stepford wives. We've got to stop all this. Okay, well, what do you think? And what do you think? And what do you think? What do you think? Baloney. We all know what we think, and you know what's wrong. You know it's wrong. You've seen it. And you can change it, and you better change it. It's got to be changed. Wasting time, wasting money. You're wasting the breath of every individual in this town. We can't breathe because of this crap that's flying all over the place. And how the heck did they keep doing this? Why didn't somebody stand up here tonight and just rail at them? I would have. Because I don't like an untruth. And I hate more than that, a second untruth, because it tells me there was no mistake about the first one. And we've had years of this. Come on now. Somebody get some guts.
Anya Miller, Brisbane resident. I think that the time has come indeed for you to do something pretty drastic to really make a change. And I would hope that you would call for a moratorium on the whole operation until all the conditions are studied properly and spelled out what has to happen in what order. And then there should be, in view of what we've heard here of misrepresentations and things, there could be a stop work order right now. But I don't know how you do the moratorium, but that's what I think would be the appropriate thing for the people that you represent. Thank you.
Sure. So I quickly scanned through this conditions of approval. So I'm not finding that baseline so I don't know where you got that information. And let me just say, I know that people are angry about this issue, and and the best way to handle an issue is to understand all of the facts and stay cool about it, because I'm not talking to you, okay? And so we don't know all the information. We're getting it, and Terry's anger. I'm feeling it too, but I also have to take responsibility for myself, because Michelle did come before the council and she has raised the issue, and we should have dug a little bit deeper into this. But I think this council is fully committed to making things right, and so but we need all the information first, and I don't think we're there yet.
So there's page missing, which is the actual document
Michelle, you should. Well, condition approval A appears to list the location of the site and noted as between Beatty Tunnel, Lagoon Way, and Bayshore Freeway, and gives parcel numbers.
Yeah, but it doesn't say anything about the baseline. And not that I'm trying to find anything that says, okay, yeah, well, it's justifiable. I mean, I think,
Well, this is a legal interpretation, right, David? And you've looked this document over. I mean, this is what you based it on, right? And I guess this cover sheet that Sherry's making copies of. So I see in conditions of approval in item C, it said materials shall be stockpiled no higher than 25 feet above the surrounding grade. And so I guess the interpretation of the surrounding grade, was that supposed to be, is it Tunnel Road or as what was, interpreted before? So that's the interpretational issue, which you said in your original report that it's not necessarily that.
Right.
Yeah, so I'd like to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Where the boundaries.
Right, yeah. Councilmember Conway, to respond, we have looked at the entire document, both the cover sheet and the conditions. Again, I'm coming at this well after the fact, when this was adopted, and the location the title, generally the title of a resolution is not looked at in setting an elevation baseline, although I do understand the argument. I think one thing that's very important for the council to understand is that there are legal remedies even before the Planning Commission was to act on the approval or the denial or modification of the permit under section 1741.090. The Planning Commission does maintain continuing jurisdiction over the use permit, and so if there is a concern either on the Planning Commission's own initiative or in response to an application or request to modify or delete any conditions of the permit or impose any new conditions to preserve the public health, safety, and welfare, the Planning Commission does have the ability to do that very quickly. It would have to schedule a hearing under the provisions of the zoning code, but it would not have to wait until it actually considered whether to grant or to continue the permit for another 5 years. There also is a provision for revocation of an interim use permit, again, upon failing to comply with any of the conditions. That would also require a hearing. So there are legal options. My concern, of course, is simply that the city comply with and follow whatever the legal standards are and the legal process for addressing the concerns that it has about the use permit.
Mm-hmm.
May I ask a question, staff? One of our speakers said that a CEQA exemption shouldn't include the site itself. The surrounding conditions don't include the site itself, because the site is looked at a bigger picture, and I'm not quite sure it's not coming out as well as he said it, but does that make sense? That when you're doing a site description of surrounding areas, that it doesn't include the project site? My question might not be quite right.
I'm not sure I completely understand the question as it was phrased.
Okay. I'm not sure. I guess I didn't put my notes as eloquently as I should have. Thank you. I'll get it down.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that we have not established that baseline, and there isn't any documentation here that says that's the case. I'm reading it, and I don't see it.
It says surrounding. That means it surrounds the site.
I know.
How clear could it be?
Again, you know, I'm looking at this thing. It doesn't reach that threshold for me. That's your interpretation. But what we have to do is move forward. I mean, we got, you know, again, I think we're committed to making it right. And so, you know, forming the subcommittee to make that happen is the appropriate response. And then getting staff and the different agencies to work with the subcommittee and come up with
just for clarification on that, there actually has been a subcommittee, and we have met, and that's what generated this document and a whole bunch of other questions, many of which have not even been brought up yet, because we're just looking at an aspect of the problem, and it's a huge problem, and this is just an aspect of it, actually. And actually, Clark and I were the subcommittee, and we did meet, raised a whole lot of questions. That's why we got the staff report and started addressing these things. And the proposal that came out of that subcommittee after dozens of unanswered questions, because the city wasn't sure, the staff wasn't sure either, actually. And they needed to investigate further. And some of that they've done, but some of it still remains to be done. And there were a lot of CEQA questions that they didn't know the answer to, actually, that the two of us asked. So the proposal was that the conversation tonight go back to the subcommittee. We have further conversation with staff as to how we proceed here, you know, whether we come back to the council for more direction, whether we, you know, come back and say, okay, ask the planning commission to hold a hearing and, you know, do what they need to do, you know, ASAP. So that kind of was the proposal, because as the city attorney says, you just can't go willy-nilly. You've got to follow the legal procedures. And our suggestion was that we take all of this back to the subcommittee, we try to put it together, get some more answers, come back to a council meeting, and if we want to give instructions, let's say, to the planning commission, then, you know, we can do that.
I think that's the most appropriate measures to take.
My
So
concern...
that was the idea anyway.
Thank you.
We can change that.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, it would be nice to say that earlier.
Thank you for the backstory, because I wasn't aware.
Yeah, I didn't know either.
But my concern is this pile, this mountain, is growing so quickly. I mean, you can see it growing in the last 2-3 weeks. I don't think we have the time to sit and think and look and think and look and discuss. I think we need to get a quicker action than coming back and referring it. And I think we need to do something in the next 5 days, 7 days, 10 days. I think we need to act on this.
Yeah, well, let me ask a question of procedure. I mean, we all sort of feel that kind of urgency, but on the other hand, you got to follow legal procedure, which is the dilemma. I mean, the moratorium has come up, but we just can't do that without, I presume, following some legal procedure. So I guess I asked it because I sort of understood the city attorney to say that needed to go through the planning commission. Is that the case? Can we do that on our own if we have it agendized, or does it have to go through the planning commission first, or what's the legal procedure that we have to follow?
The procedure for modifying or suspending the use permit would require the hearing before the planning commission, because under the city's ordinances, it was issued by the planning commission and they retain jurisdiction. There certainly is nothing that would prevent the council from directing staff to approach the operators and to request basically a negotiated moratorium while this issue is being looked at, and an agreement that the height will not exceed whatever the current level is until there's again the opportunity for further review and a decision in terms of what direction to go. That wouldn't require a planning commission hearing, and is something that the council could provide direction on without, again, going through any additional process. If the operator declines to agree to that, then you would still have the option of having it heard by the Planning Commission, but it certainly could be approached on an informal basis and a negotiated basis between the city and the operators.
So that is a optional, that we'd ask them to stop while we discussed it or not raise the height. But if it was a health or safety issue, we could enact that immediately, correct? Or if there was...
If it was a health or safety issue, then it would go back to the Planning Commission immediately for their hearing on either revocation or modification of the conditions. It would still have to go back to the Planning Commission. That could be done on an expedited basis, but they would be the body that would hear that.
So there's no method to say, if we were inclined, not to say that we are, stop today. Unless it was imminent threat or danger.
I think maybe you're talking about
Emergency moratorium.
Urgency ordinance, which would be a moratorium. Is that the...
Yeah, it's not,
David?
yeah. I mean, a moratorium generally is prospective going forward, so it would certainly prevent the initiation of any new similar uses or any permits for any similar types of dirt stockpiling. A moratorium wouldn't by itself affect a permit that was issued previously. Now, there is a provision that says that in the event of significant dust generation, the Public Works Inspector can immediately shut down the use. However, that is only until the project is brought into compliance. So if there was a dust issue and the inspector or the city was satisfied that that had been addressed by whatever measures were appropriate, then at that point they would be allowed to reopen. But if that problem is ongoing, then it can be shut down immediately based on that dust generation until it's addressed.
So the city manager is going to come up with a very creative solution to this dilemma here, so I should probably interfere.
Well, I think you oversold my thought process. I was going to suggest that, not to put Jonathan on the spot, but he's here, and this is his operations in terms of any sort of kind of voluntary immediate action. Might be best to ask him tonight what he feels he could do, or what sort of conversation he would feel that he could have with us in a shorter term. I think, as Terry has noted, this is getting bigger by the day, and they do have significant contracts that they're currently working on. So I guess, there's a whole issue, I think, long-term where we go with this, which I think we can get our hands around. And, just because the piles are a certain height today doesn't mean that we can't get them to be lower in the future. But in terms of any immediate action in the next, week to 2 weeks, I think we really have to have the cooperation of the operator. So put Jonathan on the spot, but he's the one who would have to talk to the companies that he has leases with out there.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that, when's their next council meeting?
The 3rd, or is it the 3rd? I think the 3rd.
3rd of September?
It's a Tuesday.
Correct.
Tuesday? Okay. Because there's a whole lot of things that could go on between now and then. The subcommittee could meet, the staff could get to work, the conversation could happen with Mr. Sharpman, and he could talk maybe to some of the operators, see what's going on. If I were sitting in Mr. Sharpman's shoes, I'm thinking, God, I've got to move all that dirt and lower it, and oh my God, he must have some problems too in So I think, because that can create a lot of problems as well. So I think there's a really big, complex issue here that needs to be addressed expeditiously, you know. And maybe we can do the first step by agendizing it on the next meeting, try to do, you know, what we can between now and then. If we need to go to the Planning Commission for, you know, something more formal, then we could certainly, you know, instruct the Planning Commission and the staff accordingly at that time. But in the meantime, let's try to see what we can do, you know, informally. And also get our act together better for next steps. Be my suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hope that within the next days between this meeting and the next meeting that you have a pretty good update for us, and hopefully a path forward for, you know, what the interim use out at that site is going to be. And also the, you know, getting, you know, a handle on some of the dust mitigation efforts out there. So, yeah, let's hear it from Jonathan.
Yeah, if he wants to.
Jonathan Sharpman, UPC Sunquest, and we're happy to sit down with staff and the representatives of BACMed and any other agency that wants to discuss interim solutions. We also, as before, remain committed to living within whatever conditions of approval on any permit that you issue or that you extend for our site. We will live within those conditions, and we want to work with you to define what those are and to define in our contractual obligations what those responsibilities are to the people who are actually operating out there. And so this is something we remain committed to working with the city on, working with our operators on, and as soon as we get the call from staff, we will schedule whatever time is necessary to address these issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, you know, another thing that I hope that you guys address, and John had mentioned it in the staff report, was you know, sure, right now they're studying, or sampling the soil that comes to the site to make sure that it's clean, but you know, I think we need to have a better process for evaluating that. And so I hope that is also part of the package.
Well, that's kind of something that cropped up during the extension part too. You know, is you know, these measures and everything like that. Is what do you want to put in this permit going on? So it's not like this is, you know, really an overnight thing. It is a process, and it's like, well, you want to get it right. And I guess asking the city attorney if we send it back, or when we go back to the Planning Commission with a specified set of conditions that we want, and then you say, oh shoot, I forgot a few things. How quickly can you send it back? Because then once you do that, you've got a contract for X number of years, and could you modify that? Yeah.
At any point during the 5-year term of the contract, or the 5-year term of the permit, rather, if you determine that there are further problems, there are issues that are not being addressed, then you can add at any time during that 5-year permit period any additional conditions. It has to go through the hearing process. There have to be findings that would support that, but it's not bound to be only the conditions that were issued at the beginning of the 5-year permit time.
Yeah. And John, what was your vision as far as when you thought originally this should go before the Planning Commission?
We're waiting for an updated ops plan that had the input from the regional board and the county environmental health. We'd have to advertise it 30 days in advance. I was hoping by the end of October we'd be to the commission, but
okay.
I don't have all the work product that would I'll guarantee that at this particular moment.
Okay, so this is in
In the interim, I mean, you know, we could work out an agreement with the property owner or with the with the soil recycler, with the soil processing company to come up with something that would work for until we had something in place permanently. But you're going to bring it back before the council before it would go to the planning commission.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
of course.
So,
let's give direction, additional direction to the planning commission on it.
Definitely.
Right.
as far as the cubic yards that are allowed, are they still within that permit amount? Item O? How many trucks is that per month?
It depends whether it's a 10-wheel or an end-up, ma'am. Catching me a little bit off guard because I don't have the records in front of me, but I don't recall the Bayland soil processing operation ever having a month when their import exceeded that.
That's
But
a lot of dirt.
the current,
120,000. Yeah.
There's a lot of dirt.
the mountain's growing pretty damn quick.
Yeah, no.
I mean, it's fresh soil and it's coming in very quick. I don't have a thought process to correlate that to.
120,000 is a lot of yardage, ma'am. I think the last report I have for BSP was for June, and that showed 90,000 yards, I think, of import for that month.
Yeah. So that's something we could bring back at our next meeting, I think, some
We can
data.
check that
right?
out, yeah.
Sure, I could bring back the data, yes, sir.
So we're going to have an updated report on this in 2 weeks?
September 3rd, is
Third.
it? Yeah.
Whatever that works out to be.
Okay.
Okay, we can do that, right? Okay, great. Now we got a time problem. According to my watch, it's 25 after 11. And we didn't even
like
extend the
heated in
meeting.
that.
And we have
Move on.
the whole A, B, C, D under new business, and
Mr. Mayor?
Rich has been here all evening, and I have a suggestion to make. I don't know, maybe, let's see if they're consistent.
Well, I think items A and B could go fairly quickly. And then item C, I do have the consultant who did the report. Mr. Swig is here tonight.
Ooh, okay.
So I was thinking if we could do A, B, and C, and I'll buy Mitch lunch. I'll owe him lunch if we, 'cause I think that one may take a little bit more time. We could delay that to the September 3rd.
But, since Rick is here, maybe we can move C to
Do C first?
first, yeah.
Yeah.
I do also, we had an intern work on B, and he's gone back to school on Thursday, so if we could get B done as well, C.
So, yeah, we're
I
just.
think we'll get them all done.
We'll do
We're
A,
gonna stay here
B,
until we
yeah.
get it done.
I'll move to extend the meeting till midnight.
Second.
Randy just told me that A is not time sensitive, so we could do B and C.
Okay.
And we have a logistical problem with the DVDs because we've gone through 4 hours, so she needs to change it. It's going to take a couple minutes if you want it to be
Okay.
Let's
recorded.
take a break.
Okay.
You want to vote on the extension to midnight?
Okay, so are we still recording now, or not?
We did.
Oh, I thought she wanted to-
You didn't call the question. Rick.
No, we're not recording. She has to change the CD.
Let's
That's
take the
what-
break and we'll.
Yeah, so we'll do that after the, okay. If she's not recording.
You're still rolling right now, so if you
Still
want to
rolling right
make
now,
the
so-
motion to
Okay, the
extend
motion was
meeting.
to extend to midnight.
Got a second.
There's actually first and seconded.
Call the
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
If you can finish it in 9 minutes, that's how much time's on a DVD.
No, we're never going to make 9 minutes yet.
Not with this council, heck no.
Now you're up.
Change the DVD, yeah, right, yeah.
So we don't need to do A. It's not time sensitive.
Okay,
So we could do B and C,
okay.
and then depending on how.
Why don't we do C first, though, since I didn't realize he was here.
Okay.
And then we do,
You would do B after that?
yeah, B after that. Economic Development Plan. And then,
We're going to do.
Oh, I'd say yes, but
We're going to do C first, and then B, and then. Either that or we'll do it on the 19th. Yeah.
on the 3rd. What about the meeting after that? You'll be back
He'll
then?
be back, yeah.
Okay.
He'll be back on the 19th.
Okay. Okay, all right, I'm sorry. And we need to get that approval for me to be on a spur panel, too. Yeah. Thanks, Mitch.
Ray, I'll ask Clark, but are you available tomorrow afternoon?
I'm busy in the morning, and so
I was down to talk to Michelle, but oh well. I mean, you know, I'm not really at fault for not putting it on the agenda. You know, she can't.
Okay, so we resume.
I should have put it on.
TV is all back and functioning, and we're going to consider first the feasibility and market study for the Sierra Point Hotel. And I believe the gentleman is here to present that. We've seen you before.
Yes, you have. Thank you for inviting me back. Hope I have the strength to get through this hour.
I think we all share that.
So, as promised, I did my study, and I guess I can go to the bottom line.
Sure.
The bottom line is that at this point it would not be feasible or not be advisable to consider putting a hotel on that site at Sierra Point. If you did build that hotel at this point, you could probably fill it and watch it go bankrupt at the same time, which is kind of an interesting irony. And the issue is not necessarily the lack of demand, but the quality of that demand and the pricing of that demand, which would yield total revenue and pay for the bills, and give a reasonable return to any developer. And that's really the bottom line. This area. The irony is this area is including San Francisco, Brisbane, South San Francisco, the airport, both North and South airport areas. You will read in the headlines that it was a record year, and it is a record year. Unfortunately, again, that record year doesn't include room rates that will yield enough profit to make a new development feasible. Nor will it next year, nor will it the following year. And if I could look into my crystal ball, which is what I try to do when I do a feasibility study, I think somewhere between 2018 and 2020 it becomes reasonable. But again, my crystal ball doesn't allow to understand the economic ebbs and flows that go on in this world. So that's really the bottom line of the study. But I'd love to entertain questions, and then I could probably give you a more rounded view of it. But I would recommend that all of you, if you have not read it, simply read the summary of opinions. Summary of opinions really encapsulate the whole picture.
Okay. I think we all have a couple of questions. See, Clark and Cliff, you were a part of this right from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Did you want to weigh in on any of it?
No, I'm sorry we got to this late, because I think would have really been good to have the full presentation from Rick, and I understand, this late in the hour, because I think, for the community to kind of really get a grasp that it's, this document is really educational, and I would consider it. Hopefully, I just wanted to ask staff if this is something that would be maybe to put into our general plan. Would it fit into the upcoming general plan EIR? Is it pertinent? Or John's not here to probably answer that. Or
I know that it's probably definitely pertinent to discussions about a future development agreement out at Sierra Point. And we had a conversation the other night with the design subcommittee about the relevancy to it with regards to the design guidelines. So I know at least within those two documents, there's probably, if not, I don't know what you necessarily would adopt the study within the reports, but you would certainly use them to help influence your decision making within both of those.
Sure.
But I think probably what you're thinking, I'm guessing, is to get the study in some sort of a city document so that we don't lose it over time.
It's like a background document.
Yeah, which is a good point. So let me talk with John and staff about that. At least maybe like a technical appendices to the general plan or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Rick, I'm sure you'd probably kind of consider this a technical document. I mean, because it's very, very thorough. It's very good. Actually, a lot of good information in here. And so, how long do you state that? Okay, this is for this block of time, or? Or is it until, like you said in there, until it develops and?
Well, I think the biggest point that I tried to make is that you to have a successful hotel development, you have to have your own really defined point of demand.
Mm.
And right now, I finished this document in June, and so we've had a summer. And without looking at any documents, I can tell you that the 2 hotels on Sierra Point have had their biggest summers in history. Why? Because there's no rooms left in San Francisco, and therefore that demand has compressed. But that demand doesn't belong to those 2 hotels. That demand is a coincidence of something else, which is San Francisco being sold out. So the point that is the most important is that any hotel that is developed out there to be successful must have demand that it owns. And that demand is going to come out of the development of the land which is currently vacant. It's also going to come out of the buildings out there that are currently mostly empty, if not mostly empty. Mm-hmm. And so when that developable land infills and becomes a biotech campus, becomes another type of headquarters campus, when the empty or mostly empty buildings fill up with headquarters type businesses that have people coming to visit those campuses, that's what's going to fill hotel rooms. In the meantime, it's going to be borrowed demand. And it's going to be borrowed demand from compression out of San Francisco, because there are no hotels being built in San Francisco, nor will there be hotels coincidentally built in San Francisco of significance. There are 2 small projects being done, but 100 rooms or so, of significance before 2018 or 2020. Mm-hmm. And they are full now. It's a parallel situation. But the demand that's there now, it's coming out of San Francisco. It comes out of Oyster Point, but it isn't owned by Sierra Point. It borrowed.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that's a very, very tenuous and fragile situation, because if that demand does no longer compress out of San Francisco, if that demand is no longer needed from the Oyster Point or South San Francisco demand quarter, then those hotels go back to what they were previously, which is empty and even more unprofitable than they are today. Mm-hmm. So that really wraps it for you, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we had our subcommittee meeting and got briefed by Rick on what the study eventually pointed out. Yeah, sure, I was disappointed. I was hoping that this could be another source of revenue for the city. It's interesting that you're talking about this borrowed demand, and that the feasibility of a hotel is, you're basing it on being able to stand on its own.
Exactly.
When we talked about the other hotels, that you had advised not to build. I think one of them, I don't know if both of them.
The Radisson.
But yet that has been a very good revenue source for us. But maybe it has not been a financial benefit for the developer who built it.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at those things. You're looking at feasibility. Is it good for us if it's built, and even if we got half of it, filled, and the other half didn't have, folks a good portion of the time, but sometime it is fully, full capacity. I mean, of course, you want there to be a win-win situation for everybody. And I think what you've done here is you stated, if you want to have that win-win situation, you have to do these things like get the other properties developed and filled. Not just built, but they have to be thriving. then the hotel is the last piece of the potential puzzle. And even then, you're only recommending a 200-room hotel and not the 700-room hotel that has been appropriated for that site. And I think that's something that this council then will have to address. Okay, does 700 rooms make sense out there in the design guidelines? Probably not. So we need to, kind of look at that. But this information has been very helpful in kind of providing a reality check. So thank you for that.
And I think also the thing is, what you make a very good point. For you, it's undoubtedly, if it was built tomorrow morning, it would be an immediate revenue source for the city
Absolutely.
of Brisbane. For the developer, not so good. And so in attracting developers, or in attracting, even if you had a willing developer, in attracting the debt to enable that developer to build that hotel, they would stumble upon my same findings, whether done by myself or somebody else, and the lender would say, talk to somebody else until there was nobody to talk to, and you're not going to get it built anyway. Mm-hmm. So that's where, as a city, I absolutely understand it's a great revenue source if built tomorrow. But there are other circumstances that fall into the mix financially. So that's where the car crash occurs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Terry, do you have any questions?
No, not really. Very interesting report, and it would be a good revenue source for the city if it were feasible.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
I have two minor little questions.
Sure.
Now, I understand the overall economic analysis makes perfect sense to me. It's depressing, but undoubtedly true. But there were two little things that when Sierra Point was first planned, people thought it would be great to have a hotel out there by the marina because that would be a big attraction. So my first question is, was that a silly thought? And the second thing is that developers for years have said, oh, God, if we only had better freeway access, everything would be turned around. So, and that you mentioned that as well in the report. So my question is, those two little things, what's your response?
Sure. The marina, the marina doesn't do you any good because there's 500 boats out there that have 500 beds in it. Think of it that way. So those folks aren't going to use your
No, not as users, but as a wonderful scenic attraction.
Yeah, but
like Sausalito,
Yeah, but well, I'll use your Sausalito. Thank you for coming up with Sausalito. If you turn around and stop facing the boats, you face a town which has significant retail, lots of restaurants, lots of action, and other energy. Mm-hmm. So when Sierra Point develops and has multiple restaurants, a couple movie theaters, and some other action, then that's part of the chemical mixture. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the second question?
The freeway exits.
Oh, the freeway exits that's a tough one. You just consider that's where even more so that infill, that developing of its owned demand sources becomes critical, because Oyster Point is but spitting distance away. However, you have to drive 3.5 miles to get there. Mm-hmm. And so given the choice of staying in the most beautiful hotel over the most beautiful marina in the entire world, or being across the street from where I really want to do business, where am I going to be? I'm going to be across the street. It's a location issue. Mm-hmm. And those freeway entrances and exits don't do this project any favors. Mm-hmm. by any means.
So that, in your mind, does become a significant inhibition.
Significant problem.
Uh-huh. If you know the territory.
Okay.
Right. If you're on the internet, you might not know about those details.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was one of my first learning
You didn't
curves.
know.
My first learning curve was when I went over there, and I went, wow, and I drove right past the Sierra Point exit to Oyster Point, and had to turn around and come right back.
Yeah.
You know, and I live in San Francisco, so you know.
But you can do it going that direction. Try doing it from the other direction.
Exactly.
Rick, just an off question here. Why is San Francisco so full now? Does that have to do with the America's Cup or, you know, the economy recovering? What do you think?
I think I've said it before. You got a three-legged stool. You have tremendous commercial demand, the growth of internet and biotech, whether both in Mission Bay, the new Upper Market Street, south of Market, zero vacancy rate in commercial. That's happening. Convention business is at a peak, 900,000 room nights a year generated by convention business. In fact, Moscone can no longer handle the demand, which is creating an expansion
So they're
need.
expanding,
Right. And then third, tourism. You know, the economy's back. San Francisco is an amazing international destination, because even at our most expensive room rates, which might be at $500 or $600 at a Ritz-Carlton or Four Seasons, it's literally half of what the same product would cost if you went to London, Paris, or Rome.
Right.
So for the European traveler, even though
It's
allegedly
cheap.
there is an economic problem over there,
Yeah,
it's a 50% discount.
right.
So go to Union Square tomorrow, walk across Union Square and listen for the English language, and you will not hear it. And it won't be indigenous species speaking Chinese or Spanish. It'll be Danish and German and French and Italian. It's really extraordinary. I've never seen it in my life like this. It's really amazing. What I would recommend you do as to keep this document living and breathing is I would put it away for about 24 months, and then bring it out again and see what how bad the crystal ball was broken when it was first written. And then revisit, because there is a timeline here that is recommended. And 2 years from now, the financial markets may have changed. 2 years from now, there will be more demand for hotel rooms, and so maybe instead of a 2020, it'll become a 2018. And even if you take something up in 2015, it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to get it built anyway. Right. So I'd recommend that you dust this off. Don't have to call me back, but you dust this off and revisit this in 2015 for the future.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
So, Stuart, can I ask you, have we seen our coffers fatten up in the last 3 months from the hotel?
Yes. The hotels are doing very well for us.
Okay. Are we beating our projections from the budget?
Not yet.
Okay. Thanks, Rick.
Right. Okay, so the next is the priority conservation areas.
Hello, my name is Tony Aguilar. I'm an intern here. And earlier this summer, the council requested staff look into the PCA grant program, so I did. And just really quickly, the PCA grant program is part of a larger program called Plan Bay Area that the SCC, which stands for State Conservancy, State Coastal Conservancy, and MTC, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, put together in response to the Climate Protection Act of 2008. So it's composed of two components, which are PDAs, priority development areas, which promote compact development, and PCAs, which are priority conservation areas, which promote open space and natural habitat. And so you can receive grant money for having a PCA if you're going to do anything with it or just keep it as open space, but you need to have it first. And when I found out about this, the deadline was in like 2 weeks, July 19th. So we were unable to meet that deadline. So I had a conversation with San Bruno Mountain Watch, and they recommended 2 properties, the Livingston and Peking Handicraft properties, and the Open Space and Ecology Committee recommended the Mackenzie properties as potential PCAs. And also San Bruno Mountain Watch has made contact with staff in Daly City, South San Francisco, and Brisbane about perhaps designating all of San Bruno Mountain as a PCA. And it'd be beneficial for us to go ahead and have one in Brisbane because it lets you be able to apply for grant money. So.
Okay. Council? I have a couple of things, but.
No, I think that.
Ready? Terry?
Go ahead.
No, thank you, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.
The report, but I think the Levison and Peking Handicraft are kind of priority areas, you know. And, I didn't catch what the Open Space and Ecology had asked. What did they request?
The Mackenzie properties?
McKesson.
Oh, okay.
Which surround the end of the Northeast Ridge Industrial Park, between the park. I thought they were going to contribute those. They were supposed to dedicate those. So why should anybody else pay for them if they're going to contribute them?
I mean, once they're designated as a priority conservation area, the past grants have not only been for the purchase of properties, but also for the maintenance of properties.
Okay.
So even if they are donated to us, declaring, trying to get them designated as a PCA could still be beneficial.
Okay.
I think with the McKesson properties that they were to be donated into the park system, but the park won't accept them until they've been
fixed to a certain level.
Brought up to a certain standard.
All right. Got it.
Can I ask a question then of the city attorney in regards to Peking Handicraft and Levison property, that if we designated those priority conservation areas, I mean, because we do have an open space plan, and right now they're not designated open space.
Right.
Would that put us in a predicament of perhaps potential taking or reducing value or anything like that?
Councilmember Conway, I don't believe that it would. The designation as a PCA simply makes the properties eligible for grants. It doesn't affect their status as private properties, so I don't think it would be a problem.
Oh, okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, the thought that I had was that the most important thing to achieve is to get the San Bruno Mountain Park area, the Habitat Conservation Area, designated as a PCA. Because as the way I read all the material here, there are deadlines for grants, but you can apply anytime for a PCA. And then when the time comes that they have another grant period, then okay, then you're already ready. And so I think the most important land area to get designated is the San Bruno Mountain and the habitat. And then all these other areas are essentially adding to that. Because I don't see these individual parcels as having, because it says regional value. Well, acquiring the Peking Handicraft is not a regional value, but if you have the whole mountain as a PCA and then you're adding to that, it seems to me that your chances of getting grant funding would be greater. So that was kind of the way I read it. So I'm hoping, and I know that's one of the things that's proposed here, that you work together, with the trustees and the county and go after it. But it would have to be a cooperative effort with all the surrounding cities in the county. To me, that's number one priority. And then the other things that, when the grants come through, you say, okay, we got this priority conservation area. Now we'd like to add these additional Brisbane acres or part of the Levinson or Peking Handicraft or what have you. And I'd go even further too, because they also talk about the connection between ecological areas in the bay, and that, that's in the Baylands plan. And so why shouldn't we try to also think about Ice House Hill, or, the riparian wetlands that we were talking about, which is a connection between, the mountain and the bay. These are all possibilities, but it still seems to me that the key central component is San Bruno Mountain. That's what's really got to be designated. And then all these other things are basically become adding to that. My view, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think making San Bruno Mountain a PCA on its own is the number one priority. And I think you'll stand the greatest success.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Baylands, I think the Baylands could be a separate PCA because you have a PDA and a PCA, that are working.
But we should include them too.
But Clark, you brought up the Peking Handicraft and Levinson properties. So in our general plan, it states that it's that there is some development that is allowed. And I know, Dave, you talked about that it doesn't matter if it's private property or not. But what if the general plan states that the properties, have some development on them? Would you need a general plan amendment to?
You wouldn't want to do that.
No. Okay. All right. I'm just asking. I mean, because I guess, yeah.
I think you don't want to get into anything that's going to be zoning.
Right.
Okay, just
That's a key.
clear that.
Yes.
That's what we just stay clear.
And you don't run into problems.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd go with that.
So that's kind of the direction, and I don't know who's going to follow up on it.
Isn't Levinson and Peking Handicraft, wouldn't that be considered part of San Bruno Mountain, even though they're...
That's the point. That's
Yeah, that's
exactly
the
the point.
Yeah.
That you're basically adding to this really important regional ecological resource.
Yeah.
That's how I would conceptualize it.
We did have a brief conversation about this at the last HCP meeting in May or June, whenever that was. And the parks, or the San Mateo County Parks was going to take a look at that. But I think the reason we wanted to come forward tonight was that we don't control that process, but we do control process within Brisbane. So we thought at least we could move forward with what's in Brisbane while we still try to work with the county and the other cities in terms of the larger thing.
But I do agree. If we get that county thing, we're going to have a lot more.
Yeah, if we get that, we kind of have everything else.
Well, even though it will take quite a bit of cooperation to get the entirety of San Bruno Mountain between the county and our little areas that are adjoining it designated, because you'd need quite a bit of cooperation. I think that having at least the start of our priority conservation areas with the Peking and the Levinson property would be good, because it's something that if a grant were to come up, we could act on our own towards those properties. Whereas it may take quite a while to get the whole of San Bruno Mountain, or even our portion of San Bruno Mountain. And then, of course, any grant proposal would need to encompass the cooperation between the entities.
Right.
So.
Okay. I think it's clear where we're at.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That's fine.
So we're going to do the rest of new business at a subsequent meeting.
So, Clay, if I can, Mitch, you're going to be out of town in September? 3rd. So,
okay.
I think it's really important to have Mitch do the...
oh, yeah, absolutely.
His presentation, so if we can put that for the second meeting, right?
We'll put it under presentations, the first thing on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we owe him that.
We do.
Yeah, we should look at this thing fresh. I mean, I'm tired.
So there's just one other thing, if maybe the other things can be postponed till the next meeting. But there's one thing we needed I wanted to get council support for. Mr. Sharpman, who just left, has put together a panel presentation at Spur on the transit-oriented development in the Baylands. And he, of course, is on the panel, and the planning director of MTC is on the panel, and the suggestion is that the mayor of Brisbane be on the panel. I'm aware of how careful one has to be in that role. And so one of my careful aspects here is to make sure that it's okay with my fellow council members to go ahead with that, because evidently they need to know by tomorrow. That's why we're doing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think? What's that?
Today.
Oh, tomorrow, okay, all right, well, tomorrow morning. Is that okay?
As long as that's okay with the city attorney.
I have talked with the city attorney.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, good.
Yes, and you, of course, I will never do anything without talking to the city manager and the city attorney. Hey.
Right. So let it be
Is that
said,
okay?
so let it be done.
Okay, all right, so it sounds okay. So you're going to tell Jonathan, because he's expecting you to let him know. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order, or may we move to adjourning in the memory of William Spencer, or?
Just one quick thing.
Okay.
The thing by Senate Bill 543 or something by, I guess,
Cherry Hill?
That maybe staff can review that. I think the League of California Cities is saying that it really kind of undermines the city's power, and would ask that we send in letters of opposition to the, now it's going to the Assembly.
It's already passed the Senate?
Well, it's past the, what committee?
Subcommittee. Sure.
I'm not, the latest I heard, which I think was Thursday, was that there was a meeting set up between Senator Hill and the league staff. So I'll research it and get back to you tomorrow. But I guess what you're saying is if it's moving forward into committee, then send a letter of opposition.
I don't even know what it's about.
Yeah.
It basically is a bill that would make it illegal for PACs that have, such as the one that supports the League of Cities, to be able to support, use money that they get from the cities to, if they
advocate.
If they get money from the cities, then they can't go and advocate on a statewide ballot measure or a state proposition.
Even if the cities say, yes, we want you to do.
Well, the issue is that no city, in the past, the league has had a PAC that has, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but it basically used non-public revenue to do its political activity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is basically saying that if your organization has underlying monies from public organizations, then you can't participate in the political process. It's really, I mean, I think the way the league looks at it is it's an effort to mute the voice of the cities.
Yeah.
Through the league.
I would
Yeah.
I would want to look at it before I recommended not supporting it.
Right.
That's fair.
And
Yeah,
I don't have enough information
Right.
to say that.
Jessica did send something out last week about it.
There's been a whole series of emails.
There's been a series of
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
that I,
And we got an email today on it.
You know.
so.
Okay, I'll pull together in the morning and send you out kind of what looks like the current status of it is.
Right, okay.
It'd be interesting to see what Kevin Mullen thinks of it. You know,
Yeah.
talking about you and Michelle, boy,
Yeah.
Jessica and...
Okay, so that's what we're going to do about this legislation. Terry, you had something before we adjourn?
no, I was going to make that motion to adjourn,
Second.
and I got interrupted.
Oh, okay.
So I will make
In memory
the
of
motion to adjourn.
Ian Spencer.
Third.
Right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. You did it. So we adjourned, that's all.
Made it.